Morning, Abby. Mic check.
Good morning.
That's quick. Garcia, I'm going to call today's meeting to order. Jen, will you do roll call, please?
Mike Dolson, Tom McDonald,
Here.
Jennifer Finley, Jim Molitor, Carol Langford, Danielle Matt, Bing Matt, James Steele Jr.,
Oh, yeah.
Martin Charlo,
Present.
Len Tutti, Lenish Trahan.
Thank you, Jen. We'll start today off with a prayer. Could I ask Len, would you lead us in prayer? Thank you, Len. We have minutes from April 11th for your consideration.
Chairman, on page 3, actually, sorry. Where it says I was out of the meeting, can I just put that I was zooming in while traveling to my to Washington State University
Indeed, that's what you were doing.
safely.
Safely.
Motion to approve the minutes with corrections.
Motion by Len to approve the April 11th council minutes with corrections. Second by Danielle. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 1 abstention. Jimmy and Bing. 2 abstention. 2 abstaining. Sorry, Abby. Okay, we have today's agenda. Any additions, Len? Okay. Carol?
I
Martin?
have a trip update.
Okay. And do we have any walk-ins, Jen? 4? Okay.
A couple open and a couple in exec.
Okay. Motion by Carol to approve today's amended agenda. there a second? Second by Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor? Okay, we will take our first walk-in. I guess we'll do walk-in first. Okay. Who's up? Oh, Father. Come on up, Father Victor, come on up. Just come up to the table and, push a mic button there and get a red light on the mic.
Sit or stand. I know,
Oh, my
right?
goodness.
Um,
Welcome, welcome.
yeah. I'll just read my letter. Okay. Dear Tribal Council representatives, I'm Father Victor Cancino, the new pastor of St. Ignatius Mission, and also for our two smaller churches, Sacred Heart Church in Arlee and St. John Birchman's in Jocko. I come before the council today because Representative Carol Langford urged me forward to extend an invitation to you all, which I wanted to do, but did not know how or if I still had time. But here I am, and I'm glad I'm here. That's a strong phrase. I'm glad I'm here with all of you on the Flathead. There must have been several times in the history of the tribe where the church seemed to get in the way of indigenous sovereignty, rather than embrace and respect the rich cultural heritage of a people with a powerful spirituality of their own. This miscommunication of the past continues to be a source of pain for many folks even today. For this, I am sorry. The best I can do is continue to learn with each encounter and sharing of stories among friends. Okay, enough of this sad talk. You know the history better than I do. On Sunday, May 12th at 11 a.m., the Bishop of Helena, Bishop Anthony Vetter, will say a mass at St. Ignatius Mission and install me in a formal way as the pastor of the church. It's also Mother's Day, and my own mother will be present and travel from Oregon to be there. I wish to extend an invitation to the council as elected representatives of your districts for this event. I hope all or some of you can make it on that day. If you RSVP to me personally, you will be considered a guest of honor for this installation mass. Afterwards, please stay and share a hot meal with the parish in our social hall. The installation mass isn't really about me at all. As you know, becoming a representative of any community places you at the bottom of the barrel, as a servant to all rather than a king of the hill. It has been a true privilege to serve this community, tribal and non-tribal members, from this reservation. Through every funeral service and burial and Sunday service that people attend, I am growing with this community. The installation is a day to celebrate everyone who serves the community in their own way. If you come, please let me know, and I thank you in advance for your presence and support. Father Victor Cancino. That's it. And can I leave? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Father Victor. Thank you. Carol?
I want to see, I plan on going, and also Father Victor was at the round dance the other night for
Flowers.
flower gopher, and he won a gift.
Yeah.
Where is it at? No.
Oh, you're right. That's
You
my,
should
my
be
first,
wearing it.
my first piece of regalia. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, he was so excited, but I had to go, so I wasn't able to stick around. But anyway, thank you for coming in very much, and
Yeah.
I'll definitely be there. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father. And congratulations for that.
Yeah.
Community is well served. Okay, Jen?
Can we go into executive?
Okay, we'll move into executive with whom? Move into open session. Go ahead and restate the need.
Early Childhood Services is requesting a waiver of the background check policy to move forward with hiring Francine Antwine.
Motion by Carol, second by Len. Any further discussion? Go ahead, James.
And make sure we get the wording that Mel stated in the motion, right?
Specific to early childhood services? Yes. Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
What funding source is this gonna be paid out of?
Office of Head Start.
So that's federal funding?
Mhm. We can pay her out of our childcare funds as well.
Go ahead, Carol.
Did we vote? Or are we, okay. So where was she paid out of before?
Office of Head Start.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
You need other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands. Yes, Martin? Okay,
I need more information about everything. I mean, Franny, love you, but we've had other people in the same situation that either are no longer employed or are employed somewhere where they didn't originally plan to be because of the federal funding and the stipulations that come with that about working with children and elders and having a background check and, these waivers are audit findings, usually. So, yeah, with that, I'll abstain. I'm gonna vote against it because abstention is a scared way of voting.
okay, motion passes. We have 7, all right, my head count, right? 7, 4, 1, voting no, Martin voting no. Motion passes.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Can
Keep
we
up the
go
good
back
work.
and make-
Move back into executive. Is there any motion? Danielle?
For member initials AF to be ineligible for a home site lease for 2 years.
Motion by Danielle. Second by Bing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands. 6, 4, 2 opposed. Len and Jimmy opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you, Council. Thanks for your time.
Okay,
You guys have a good day.
thank you. Is there another walk-in? Okay, we'll go to Len. You had something, couple of them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. Just 2 quick, updates here. I wanted to get an update on where we're at with, security cameras. When we were having, discussion with, Leroy when we approved the security manual, the issue of the cameras came up. I know there were, difficulties with trying to see who was responsible for getting those up, and IT seems to refuse to want to get involved. So it's been 2.5 months. We have not got no reports. I understand we've had another tribal facility that was broken into just recently, and it had cameras. Unfortunately, not hooked up. So if we can follow up and let's give a time frame on getting this done. Otherwise, because every time we give a directive or request, it gets put off to the side. Too many times, far too many times. And nobody's and we're holding nobody accountable, so it's actually on us. So if we can ask the executive team to come in and say, look, this is what needs to happen to get all of our cameras hooked up and kind of give us a plan and detail so we can keep them responsible.
Thank you, Len. Jen, can you make Lisa come in next available time? Go ahead, James.
Yeah, thank you. And to add to that, it's also the monitoring of them. We can get them put up, but then there's a debate over who can monitor them. I know when I talked with Leroy last, that was the other issue, getting the cameras put in, getting them updated, and then being able to monitor them was another issue to add to Councilman Tutti's comment.
Okay.
Thank you, James.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, item number 2 is the Elmo floor falling apart, deteriorating. We have been, bringing this to facility and maintenance attention for years now. And even at one time, we made the request, if you guys don't want to do the floor, well, at least give us some new chairs. I think our chairs are 30 years plus old, you know? And, our elders are starting to, complain about the chairs too. I mean, they're very, very uncomfortable, so. But right now, the floor is peeling, okay? And, in some parts of the floor, and it's just a matter of time, somebody's gonna trip over that. It's gonna happen. I would like us to have, do something about this as soon as possible. We put it off to the side way too long. And, I'm not really sure what the cost is or where it's gonna come from, but I think this needs to be put in the realm of the facilities and maintenance again. And we need to just keep them on it because we've asked them to budget for it last year and they sat right there and told us they were going to do it. Nothing. So here we are now it's falling apart. So anyway, just wanted to bring that to your attention and, let's get something done about it.
Thank you, Lynn. Add that to Lisa's topic. Jen.
Is that the hall?
Yep. It's a concrete-based floor. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it has a surface on it that's coming up. Do you have any, is that it? Thank you, Lynn. Okay. We have Carol? Martin?
Just really quick, I went to Washington State University, go Huskies. It was weird going there being Husky and a Husky, but, it was for the Native American Advisory Board. It's something that we've been part of, for quite a few years. We signed a MOU with the college to work with them. We're I think we're the only Montana tribe. And so mainly it's Washington based, they have similar, the land that was given to the feds, they are getting some funds back on that for the leases and things like that. And so they're contributing that back to the university. There's a panel discussion on that on Thursday. And then Friday, we had the actual advisory board committee. They're just talking about kind of how to improve the university for Native students, how to kind of form their curriculum towards, helping Natives, keeping Natives enrolled, recruitment, really well attended by their administrative staff. The president was there for the entire time. So just, as much as I'm not a fan of the Cougars, they're doing a really good job at WSU, and their campus is actually pretty nice too. So I was there and looking forward to the next one. This is the first meeting I've been able to attend in person because it always falls on the April quarterly. So they are going to try to adjust for that as well. So Miranda Berland was also on the call, so just via Zoom. So I don't have any questions. No, I was in Pullman, and that's why I made the joke about the Go Dogs or Huskies, because I went to school in Seattle. It was a bad sarcastic joke.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, the other thing to add to that is that any tribal members from here that go there get in-state tuition, which is a huge benefit. So, we've had a lot of tribal members go over there. So that's, I used to go to these meetings 15 years ago or whatever.
It's Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. We get in-state tuition. Tribal members get in-state tuition. That's how I was able to go to Seattle. That part of the reason.
Thanks for that report, Martin. Is there any other items? Guess not. Nothing else, Martin? Is that it? Okay, thank you. All right, do you guys need a break or you want to move on? Okay, let's take care of Mr. McClure. Come on up. Yep, come on up. Good to see you. You got to push the button there, Craig, on the speaker.
Right there?
That works.
Yeah, thanks a lot for, pardon? Oh, you don't, okay. Thanks a lot for letting me come to the council meeting. Thanks, Chairman and council members. My name's Craig McClure. I'm a volunteer for the Lake County Democrats, and one of the little duties that I work on are helping candidates get signs out. And I'm real amazed. This is a great year for us. We have 7 local candidates, 4 of which are tribal. So it's going to be a big year, a big opportunity for us for the tribes. So at any rate, I'd like permission, if I could, to get approval to put signs up for our candidates at the designated locations and work with Louis McDonald to get that permit.
Carol? Motion by Carol to approve the permits as you process them with Louis. Martin?
Ooh, I can think of the 2 candidates. Who are the other, or who are the 4?
Well, we've got Shelley, of course, Shelley Fiant. We have Jacinda Morgeau, Thetis Crow. She's in Marvin Weatherwax's area. And then we have Craig Pablo is running against Greg Hertz in Senate District 7.
Oh, I didn't know about the last 2. Thank you. I'll make the second.
Second by Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor? Unanimous? I heard there was another person named Shannon Claremont that he was running, but you heard him?
You know,
Behind you.
we're still working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. All right, Channing. Peter.
Wait, John Wheeler's on.
John Wheeler's up next. Okay, sorry, my bad. My jokes. John, you on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
Yes, what I have is a Epic Tigra contract that I would like to get approved. It actually serves 78% of the hospitals in the United States, and it's basically they have a monopoly on it. They do good services, and we're already bit hook and sinker. We've already accepted this program, and would hate to see it go by the wayside. We ended up letting it lapse, and I would like to get the approval to continue with or renew the contract. And it's of course the threshold is over $250,000, so I need council approval. I also received legal review, and the only thing that they wasn't happy about is the jurisdiction, which is Washington. The contract actually does patient registration, insurance, charting, billing, and it talks to like Providence and well, all the other hospitals and stuff. So it has good, it's a good EHR system, and I don't know what else to say about it.
Any questions from council? Martin?
I'll just make the motion to approve the renewal of the contract with Sole Source, where are we at? Yeah, Epic, I'm sorry.
Motion by Martin to approve the sole source non-competitive contract with Epic for healthcare patient management. Go ahead, Bing. Second? Second by Bing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor? Unanimous? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay. My jokes. Come on up, guys. It's Peter that's running, right? Welcome to my world.
Good morning, council. Just here for a quick, hopefully approval of a research permit, and Peter also has a couple that he submitted also. The one that was sent to me was it's a research permit by a Lauren Gilmore from Princeton University. She's wanting to do some soil samples, water samples, and vegetation samples to analyze calcium and magnesium isotopes within all these elements, and then compare them to bison teeth and enamel records. The teeth have already been collected in a previous study from the bison range. But this study is going a little further, and they're going to compare the isotopes from 10 different parks, refuges, and herds across the United States. So what they're trying to do is reconstruct how the bison evolved with the plants, basically, and reconstruct the history, the paleontology, or the paleo environmental reconstruction of their history. So what they're wanting to do is compare to see what the bison were eating in the past and how it affected their enamel and their teeth. And then so far it affected the environment also. So it's kind of a broad ranging subject, but it's kind of interesting to me. But the sampling is going to be pretty minimal. They're asking for 4 plant samples, 4 soil samples, and 2 water samples from each of the 10 sites they're choosing. So it's pretty basic and pretty minimal. So I'm just wondering what your guys' thoughts are.
Any questions for Shannon? Motion by Danielle. Second by Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous for the Princeton study on
Thank you.
cavities. No, be sorry.
Yeah, what kind of cavities do bison have? Good morning, council. Thank you for your time. I've got 2 permits and a grant request. Let's see. So, okay, we could start with the first one that you see there, collection permit number 1. This is folks from the Spatial Analysis Lab. They would like to continue their work on being able to model the presence and occurrence of ventonata. They've been doing this in Missoula County, down on the Crow Reservation, and then they would like to come here and do it as well. So I'm not much of a remote sensing person, so I don't fully understand the model, but basically what they need to do is they need to they have remote sensing from the sky. They need to have some ground truthing that goes along with that. And so what they would like to do is find sites on tribal land around the reservation where they can go and basically quantify how much ventonata is there. And then they can, by understanding what's on the ground and then what's they're seeing in the sky, they can feed that into a model that will help us be able to reservation-wide not only know where ventonata is, but perhaps predict where it's going to move. So I think from a lands department and even at the bison range, this will kind of help promote that across the reservation.
Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess it's kind of for both of you. I belong to a couple of invasive species commissions. They had an issue with some collection sites from some of these studies where there was actually a higher concentrate of other weeds and things like that. And they're assuming it's from people not cleaning their gear out. Is there any stipulations in these requests that they do that before they come on to tribal property or tribal land, in order to not bring, if they're going all over the place, possibly weeds, invasive species into our area or watersheds? I totally support getting rid of ventonata, but definitely don't want to bring anything else in or have these people bring anything in. Thank you. I'll make a motion.
Motion by Martin, but then a question to Peter.
Yes, that's a great point. I know at the bison range, we stipulate anybody going out there for research, wash their vehicles prior to driving. And since this group will be kind of working through us at the bison range, although they'll be going to other sites around the reservation, we'll ensure that they have clean vehicles and are kind of using the minimal amount of invasiveness going out to these sites to sample for ventonata. I mean, it's a great point because we know ventonata moves around largely because of vehicles and other people. So, and a lot of their work will be the remote sensing piece. So they won't be on the ground a whole lot, but they are going to collect some ventonata in some different areas. So they will go out and collect a couple of bags of ventonata at some different sites. So I'll definitely mention to them, clean your vehicles, minimal amount of disturbance.
You can also request that they stick to the service roads. That way they're not off-roading, and then walk to their sites for collection.
Yep, great.
You have a motion? Is there a second? Second by Danielle. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous?
Okay, thank you, council. On to collection permit number 2. This one is pretty interesting. So this is a Smithsonian-based project. I initially reached out to these folks because they're doing some great research with bison. And then it kind of evolved into Shannon and Whisper and myself talking to these folks because they are setting up kind of a monitoring process for understanding bison and interactions on the landscape across several different reservations, including Fort Belknap and Rocky Boy and up Blackfeet and Fort Peck. So they're already established on those 4 reservations. And basically what they're doing there is they're sampling areas where bison have been restored, and they're using the same protocols for the sampling across all 4 reservations. They're calling it a long-term socio-ecological research process or network, with the hopes that by collecting the same data points at each of these different locations, that we can get a broader, more landscape level understanding of how bison are interacting with their areas where they're being restored. So in discussions with them, looking at their monitoring protocols, which basically is they want to set up 20 transects. They want to monitor plant cover and plant density. They want to monitor, they want to have some game cameras set up to monitor critters. And they also want to take birds, so they have like audio recorders so that they can see what birds are using the rangeland. And then they also want to sample bison feces. So through those sampling efforts, they want to kind of, again, understand a little bit more about how bison are interacting with the landscape. One of the concerns for Shannon and Whisper and I were, what about the data that you collect at the bison range? Who does that belong to? Does it belong to the Smithsonian? Does it belong to the tribe? And they have assured us that this is our data. The data will not be shared with anybody else. It is our sovereign data. If we choose to, kind of collate this data with the other highline tribes, then we can, to kind of get a bigger landscape level. If we don't want to, we don't have to. That's kind of at our discretion. So essentially the collection permit here would be from 2024 to 2029, which is the duration of the project. It's kind of, we don't have to provide any funding. They are going to fund the technicians to come out and do the sampling. They're going to fund the evaluation of the bison feces, and they're going to provide the audio recorders for the field. The nice thing too is they're also going to, we're going to be able to incorporate students from SKC into this process. So they're very much into training students at the local college in these field sampling methods. So we're kind of getting that nice benefit of it, as well as, some great data for the next 5 years about bison and their interactions at the range. So hopefully I've explained that well enough, but I think that's it.
Any questions? Assume the same protocol for clean vehicles, et cetera. On the bison range.
Yeah, this will occur on the bison range. This is not, this is reservation wide.
Make a motion. Mr. Chair.
Motion by James to approve the collection permit for the bison range and the Smithsonian, second by Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, thank you, council. And lastly, I know I'm taking up a lot of your time here. This is a grant that I'm working on. It's a National Science Foundation grant. And the title of the grant is Translating Interactions Between Plant Diversity and Bison Herbivory into Conservation Activities on the Bison Range. So essentially, we have a couple of goals with this grant that will help support kind of long-term management objectives. It'll kind of inform our bison grazing management. It'll direct the conservation of resilient plant communities. It'll help in formulating revegetation mixes that help with adaptive capacity to fight ventonata as well as climate change. And then it'll help kind of identify those core areas at the bison range that have the best plant communities for forage and diversity so that we can protect those cores. And then it'll help kind of identify buffer zones for targeted restoration, and then perhaps edges where we're experiencing the most invasive plants. And so we can target those areas. And then lastly, it'll help in kind of expanding cultural heritage species at the bison range too. So this is in conjunction with the University of Montana and Boise State and Salish Kootenai College. So we're trying to pull in researchers from all of those organizations. universities, I should say. And then we're also trying to kind of develop research technicians through Salish Kootenai College. That's kind of an overview of the process of the grant. There are a couple things to be aware of with this grant. So it's a National Science Foundation grant, but it has a conservation component, which many National Science Foundation grants don't. They're teaming up with the Paul G. Allen Foundation. I don't know who that person is, but he is contributing to the conservation portion of the funding. Oh, really? Oh, Paul Allen, of course. Thank you. Yeah, Bill Gates' right-hand man. Yeah, okay. So I need to, as part of this grant, I have to submit two different budgets. One is to the Paul G. Allen Foundation, and Paul G. Allen Foundation is not accepting indirect costs. So that budget cannot incur indirect costs. So that's one caveat with this grant. I'm also submitting a research budget to the National Science Foundation, and I can get indirect costs for that. So that's something to consider. The other thing to consider is data sovereignty. And so National Science Foundation really pushes for strong dissemination of data to public entities, you know, kind of a free form for data. I have put in the language of our data management, which the National Science Foundation requires. I've put very strong language in there that the tribe will administer data on a case-by-case basis as we see fit. So my opinion here is that the data is ours, and as a sovereign nation, you and the tribe get to control the data, and that we will allow data access as we see fit. So if we get rejected from this grant based on that strong language, then so be it, but I am maintaining that data sovereignty and that data language within the grant. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that. And then I don't know if there's other things that are important to add to this, but yeah, it's a potentially an exciting grant. And it would be a 5-year process as well.
Go ahead, Martin.
What's the amount from the Paul Allen Foundation?
So from Paul Allen, I am asking 1.7 million. And then from the research budget, I'm asking 1.4 million.
What do the other universities say about the no indirect?
Okay, so that's another thing that's important to understand about this.
A pretty important thing for them.
Since this is a collaborative research project, Boise State and University of Montana are going to submit their own budgets. The tribe is going to be the lead on this grant, but they're going to submit their own budgets because each university has their own differing fringe, IDC rate, stuff like that. So in our discussions, we felt like it was a cleaner process for them to just submit through their own medium as opposed to the tribe submitting it. So we're just going to submit a tribal budget. They will submit their own budgets all through kind of the grants.gov medium. So they are having research-oriented budgets, so they will be able to get the IDC. We kind of have a conservation budget and a research budget because essentially we're kind of the conservation lead.
So they're not putting into the Allen Foundation then?
I'm sorry?
Are they putting into the Allen Foundation? They're not.
They're not. They're just going to have the research budget. Yeah. So we're incurring the conservation budget, in other words, as the conservation lead. So it's not the most straightforward grant, and I want to make you all aware of those little intricacies so that you can consider it carefully.
Any additional questions? Any other questions? I would entertain a motion. Anybody wants to or not? It's for submission of two grants, one to the National Science Foundation and the other one to the Allen
It's,
Foundation.
it's one grant submission,
But, okay, but just
part of it is,
two funds.
part of it is funded by the Paul G. Allen Foundation.
One submission.
Yep, one submission to the National Science Foundation.
And with a hybrid of indirect and no indirect.
Correct. That's per the stipulation of the grant.
Motion by Martin. Second by Bing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous?
All right. Thank you very much, council.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, we'll take a quick, we'll go ahead. Bing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Shannon, before you leave here, I was at a meeting over in Bozeman with ITBC and also with the NRCS over there. And they're offering, if you get a hold of them and you can get, they'll come in and do some studies like that too on the bison range, or they're doing some other studies of these other bison management areas of the, like Peter's just stated with the different other tribes and whatnot. And they're doing a lot of different studies on it. And they also have funding down there for fencing too. So if a guy could maybe get a hold of that or get a hold of somebody at ITBC, and then they'll give you some direction on who to contact with in our NRCS, you know, to come in and do that study with the plants and weeds and whatever else there you got they want to do, but they're offering to do that. So if
Okay,
there's
yeah.
a chance you can get a hold of them, somebody, maybe that would give you some help there.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'll contact them.
Thank you.
Trying to figure out what their studies are kind of looking at and see how they'd fit in with us. But yeah, thanks, Bing.
Jen?
I asked John Harrison and Tom France to come down at 10:50.
Okay, so you got 7-minute break. Oh yeah, hey, thank you for giving us that extra 2. Oh, I can't see that far. We were on a break. Bill, 10:50.
Sonia Chippewa.
Well, welcome. We'll come back out of break and welcome John and Tom. You want this in open session?
Yes,
Okay.
well, I think, do you want this in open
Yeah.
session? Yeah.
Nothing
That's-
secret here.
That's what I thought. Martin's helping us get this set up, appreciate it. I think most everybody knows Tom France, former director of the National Wildlife Federation in Rocky Mountain and, Pacific Northwest region. He's currently, a legislator. He's, hopefully going to be a legislator, continued, in the Montana legislation or legislature. He's worked on legislation that, the tribes have appreciated. He's certainly worked to help, get some legislation, not passed, which we've certainly been concerned about. And so Tom's been, an ally of the tribes, also in his capacity as a wildlife advocate. Tom's been very involved in bison restoration, something that's important to the tribes. He has spoken about reintroduction of bison on the CM Russell National Wildlife Refuge in northeastern Montana in the past. And this is a follow-up and update on where that is, the possibility of an intertribal herd being restored to those federal lands, that area. So I'll just turn it over to Tom and we'll go from there.
Thank you, John. There you go.
It's great to see everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I will observe that I've said to many friends who wonder about tribal connections with buffalo and bison that you can go to most tribal government rooms from Lapwee in Idaho to Bismarck in North Dakota, and there are bison present everywhere. And this tribal council room is no different. And John, I appreciate the introduction. And as a wildlife advocate, I thought for many years bison couldn't be restored and didn't know much about it. But I've been on my own personal journey these last couple of decades, and that started when Brian Upton came down to my office 20 years ago and said the tribes, the Salish and Kootenai, are intent on taking the National Bison Range onto the reservation and managing it as a tribal herd. And that electrified me. And I worked with Brian and the council in the Salish and Kootenai for many years. And one of the great buffalo victories was finally getting Congress to transfer the bison range to the tribes. And now under tribal leadership and tribal management, it's just a wonderful victory. But that engagement, another issue that I was involved in with National Wildlife was over the management of CMR. And initially that was reducing the number of livestock on a National Wildlife Refuge, but over time that evolved. And in the 2008, the Fish and Wildlife Service advanced a new plan for the 1 million acres on CMR, and that plan called for buffalo restoration. And since then, we at National Wildlife have worked on that. And initially that was with the state, and that proved terribly frustrating. And we always knew there needed to be a tribal component. And so as we began working more and more with the tribes, and it's just been a wonderful journey for me. And so I want to update everyone on the council about where the negotiations and strategies are to put an intertribal buffalo herd on the grasslands of eastern Montana. We'll talk a little bit about the annihilation of buffalo, the leadership that the Salish and Kootenai and many other tribes have shown on bison restoration, the need to be thinking at greater scales if we're going to talk about really bringing back America's congressionally designated mammal to its original function as a driver of grassland ecosystems. And finally, the coalition that's come together around CMR. I'm sure you're all familiar with the carnage that occurred in the 1870s and 80s. Biologists estimate there were 40 to 60 million buffalo in this country at the end of the Civil War. And 25 years later, they were all gone. And it's something of a miracle that bison weren't shot down to extinction. And of course, the Salish and Kootenai played an incredibly important role in preserving bison and bringing them back to this reservation. This map shows the steady shrinkage of buffalo. I just point out the gap between the southern herd and the northern herd, and that was you can just see where the Union Pacific Railroad came through in 1865, 1866, that severed those herds. It illustrates how important connectivity is. And then this pile of buffalo skulls that most of us really just can't imagine how that could happen. The tribes really recovering from being sent to reservations and seeing their cultures smashed in many ways. It took years for them to realize they had the wherewithal to move forward with bison restoration. But over the last 40 years, it has been tribal governments and tribal leadership that have brought buffalo back in many parts of the United States, and nowhere more so than in Montana, where the Crow tribes began bringing buffalo back to that reservation in the 1930s. Fort Peck in 2012, Fort Belknap in 2013. The Wind River tribes in Idaho have been very, very active. Blackfeet are active, and of course, the Salish and Kootenai reclaiming the bison range and that herd for tribal management. Another part of the ongoing saga of buffalo in Indian country is the Buffalo Treaty, which was a tribal initiative that began in 2014. The Salish and Kootenai were integral to that effort. The treaty was signed on the banks of the Missouri River, pledging mutual support and mutual assistance amongst the tribes to bring back buffalo, to honor buffalo, the collective intention of the nations to welcome buffalo once again to live among us. And this notion that it was the tribes that had the responsibility and the opportunity to really restore buffalo as a significant wildlife species. I think there are presently 38 tribes around the West, US West, and in Canada that have signed the Buffalo Treaty. It's also become clear that buffalo restoration requires larger landscapes that go beyond just reservation lands. I've got to pull a couple quotes here that scientists advised Governor Bullock 10 years ago that for bison to truly be considered restored, they needed to be large enough that they were genetically, behaviorally, ecologically, and functionally similar to what existed when Lewis and Clark came to Montana in 1804. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Interior's Bison Working Group recognized that true bison restoration needed to create larger herds on larger landscapes so that bison were subject to the forces of natural selection. There really aren't that many landscapes in North America where that's possible. And again, this comes back to, I think, the tribes looking first and appropriately at their own reservation lands, but now increasingly recognizing that treaty rights and other federal actions really give the tribes the power to look beyond reservation boundaries and to public lands in the West. As I became familiar with this issue, the Lame Bull Treaty of 1855 has become something of a something I keep by my bedside. And that treaty was initiated by the Salish and the Nez Perce, who wanted to go east to hunt the buffalo. And the commissioners from the government came and put together what was essentially a peace treaty between the Western tribes and the Blackfeet. But in so doing, the 1855 treaty pledged the United States government to maintaining a buffalo commons for 100 years where all the tribes could come and hunt in peace. And that treaty was breached 20 years later when buffalo were exterminated, but the treaty has never been rescinded. And I think it presents a powerful argument that the tribes have a treaty right to buffalo on public lands. In 2016, the Rocky Mountain tribal leaders representing all the Montana tribes and tribes from Idaho and Wyoming as well passed a resolution supporting specifically buffalo restoration at the Charles M. Russell National Wildlife Refuge. In 2021, I began working with the tribes through the Rocky Mountain Tribal Leaders Council as a consultant, and really at the invitation of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, 4 Montana tribes, Fort Peck, Fort Belknap, the Blackfeet, and of course the Confederated Salish and Kootenai, all individually petitioned the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to begin a formal government-to-government consultation process over CMR. Just to note how this is something that has encompassed different tribal governments, different council members. This letter was signed by Chairwoman Fyan. We have different leadership at all the reservations now, and that's part of the reason for this briefing, but it underscores that this has been a tribal goal now for many years. Why CMR? Well, CMR, again, is the largest potential grassland for buffalo restoration. As a national wildlife refuge, it's dedicated to wildlife restoration, and it's in the heart of buffalo country in eastern Montana. I thought Jim and Bing were at CMR a couple of years ago when we put together the agreement, and I just wanted to convey to the council the scale. So this is a little B-roll that National Wildlife Federation put together, and you can see the vastness of CMR. This is on UL Bend, most of this footage, although we'll get to some bison range footage here in a minute. This area has not been grazed by cattle in 50 years, so there's no conflict with livestock on this 100,000 acre component of the Charlie Russell grasslands. Jim and Bing and I were out on just this kind of day in September looking out. And it really kind of takes your breath away how much grass is there and how vast the landscape is. Of course, no buffalo presentation would be complete without buffalo. And here we are with with a video we did on the National Bison Range. And this is these buffalo here are on the American Prairie Reserve, which is a private initiative north of CMR, where they have a private herd, but they would like to see it become a public herd at some point. Oops, let's see here. How do we do this? And so here's a map of the Russell Refuge. The top map shows the vast federal ownership in this area. The darker green is all the refuge lands, was created in 1936 by Franklin Roosevelt. The yellow lands are BLM lands, which are public lands as well. And so while this proposal is all about bringing buffalo back to CMR, there is plenty of room for an even larger vision. This lower map shows the UL Bend area, which is where most of that video footage was taken. And this units 1, 2, and 3 envision how buffalo might be phased into this landscape. The tribes and the Fish and Wildlife Service sat down in 2021 and hammered out an agreement. And I want to thank Shannon Claremont and Whisper Means, who participated with other tribal biologists in putting together an outline of what a reintroduction proposal might look like. All of the 4 tribes were working together at the request of the service to come up with a proposal. And the agreement that was put on the table called for a wild herd to be managed in trust by both the tribes and the Fish and Wildlife Service that would be owned. These would be wild animals owned by no one. A wild, self-sustaining and ecologically buffalo population, using that population to restore ecological processes. A lot of the discussion over the last 3 or 4 years has been about how do buffalo connect people, both tribal communities and the community around CMR. And so certainly a big part of the vision is an outreach and connecting people with the bison herd. There's also an agreement between the tribes and the Fish and Wildlife Service that consumptive use needs to be part of buffalo management. The agreement calls for a tribal, an intertribal management council to manage tribal hunting. And the Fish and Wildlife Service would manage non-tribal members, but the offtake, the annual harvest would be set by the Tribal Management Committee. Here's just the Intertribal Buffalo Commission would consist of tribal managers from the Wyoming, Montana Fish and Wildlife Commission. The proposal also envisions a council of elders that would come from each of the tribes to guide cultural values and make sure that tribal values were a really integral part of the management of buffalo here. And I'd just say to the CSKT Council that as we discussed with the Fish and Wildlife Service, they really saw this as an important component because it's not a skill set that they have, nor that they're really appropriately conveying. And so having a council of elders was intriguing to them, and I think energized their whole vision of this process. Then this just shows a gradual phase in of how buffalo reintroduction would work. Start with a small herd of around 100 animals, but quickly bring it up to 800 animals on 50,000 acres. And then after a decade, we would be looking at 2,000 buffalo at CMR, and really a landscape of 180,000 acres can support more than 2,000 buffalo. So these are all sort of next year's problems, next year's challenge, but the potential that is there for having one of the largest, if not the largest, buffalo herds in the country at CMR. This is the day before the last day of consultation between the Fish and Wildlife Service and tribal leaders. Bing and Jim were there. You can see them on the left. But representatives from all of the other tribes were there, as well as the regional director for the Fish and Wildlife Service. And the next day, we came together and agreed on a proposal that the Fish and Wildlife Service said they would prepare an EIS on. And that proposal is sitting on their desk right now. I would tell you that just about a year ago, 14 months ago, we were expecting the announcement to come of an EIS, and the Fish and Wildlife Service came to us, I wouldn't say directly, but the way these things are communicated, and said that they really did not want to move an EIS process forward with the election in Montana coming up. And so the tribes and the Fish and Wildlife Service agreed to mutually pause the consultation process. And this letter is really the last official communication from the tribes to Martha Williams, the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, formalizing the pause, saying to her and to the service that at the appropriate time, we fully expect to move forward with this EIS process and moving to a decision by the federal government to reintroduce buffalo to CMR. And so we're now at a place where I think there are two potential next steps. One is that the Fish and Wildlife Service will work with the tribes and advance an EIS. And the other is if the service refuses, I think the consultation process has created a record that underscores the rights of the tribes to be requesting a buffalo herd. And that, coupled with the treaty rights and various administrative decisions and laws that Congress has passed, I think if the service stonewalls or otherwise refuses to move forward, it would be my recommendation to all four of the consulting tribes that litigation is an option. I just want to underscore, no one is talking about a lawsuit tomorrow or even next month, but if the administrative process does not respond to these legitimate, powerful tribal petitions for a buffalo herd in the thousands on the CMR grasslands, I think the tribes do have options. The last thing I'd say, and I'd be more than happy to take any questions. I think this summer we will begin, and I'll probably be coming back to this council with some sort of letter that all 4 of the tribes would be looking to sign that would say to Director Williams, the election's in November. Let's see a decision on this immediately after the election. Whether or not Biden or Trump wins, let's get this on the record. I think it's likely if Trump wins that this process would stop. But I think it's still important to have the decision to move forward out there. And certainly the Fish and Wildlife Service can do that in November or December. And the other reason, quite frankly, is knowing how the Fish and Wildlife Service works, the sooner they start their processes to make an announcement, the more likely it is to actually happen. It will take weeks and months. So I'm hopeful we can start their bureaucracy moving to make an announcement in November this summer. So that's what I have today. I just close by saying it's been just one of the more rewarding pieces of work I've done working with CSKT, the Blackfeet, Fort Belknap, and Fort Peck on this initiative. And I remain hopeful and optimistic we'll get there and that someday we'll see thousands of buffalo on the eastern Montana grasslands only because of leadership provided by the tribes of Montana. So that's my update. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions. And I guess I'd also say thanks to Tom McDonald and Dale Becker and others who've worked on this process, to John. There have been a lot of hands on this and at each step of the way. And it's, again, been very, very gratifying to be a part of it.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate all your work and being such a strong supporter of tribes and inclusive and restoration of wildlife. I believe it's a treaty right that every, indigenous plant and animal should still be there.
Yep.
It's to harvest, the treaty right. So we're talking about any species in any landscape. It's the same argument. Go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, and yes, Tom, thanks for taking the time to come in and give us and keeping us updated. As this project was first being discussed, I recall some of the questions that came up, and we were still seeking them out. But have you identified any options for funding?
At this point, the short answer is no. I think we've always envisioned needing that trigger of an EIS process to bring the discussion about how this is going to be paid for to the table. Obviously, there would be a significant component of federal funding. This is a national wildlife refuge where part of their plan is to restore buffalo. There's no question in my mind that when the ask is made, there will be significant private support for this. So, Len, we have not tried to build a budget yet. We have not tried to estimate what the costs of bringing buffalo to CMR would be. But in some ways, I think that would be one of the easier challenges we face, given how challenging the political process has been and no doubt will continue to be.
Yeah, I guess I was being just a little optimistic, but I know one of the challenges that we are going to have is putting together an intertribal team.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know how that's going to work out once we start making selections, and hey, it's just the nature of the tribes. There are always going to be issues coming up and about who's getting hired and who's not, and how this is going to be managed. But it's an exciting project. I look forward to our involvement in it, and just can't wait till we see some buffalo out there. So
thanks. And yeah, I having worked with the 4 tribes in the consultation process, some of it's been really strengthening and powerful, but, there've been some cracks in the unity and differences about how to move forward. And, like all government issues, you know, there'll be successes and challenges that'll have to be met. I think that Salish and Coot and I know this as well as anybody. At some level, if we could get buffalo onto that tremendous grasslands, the buffalo will do a pretty good job of taking care of themselves. We'll fight about how many permits to hand out to hunt, or who should get to hunt, or how much it should cost, or whether or not we should expand. Those will be fights, but if we can get buffalo to that landscape, they will say we are home now, and they will thrive, absent just terrible mismanagement on our part. So that's the heartening part.
Go ahead, Bing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, is it still a plan where the tribes are going to donate some buffalo to this, for this project? And also to the fencing part? There's still was a lot of fencing to do there. And then with this dock association, they're trying to raise some crap with you guys with us when we first started this, you know, so just wondering if there's, you know, about the fencing and whatnot that's going to have to be done there.
Thanks, Bing. And again, within the consultation process with the service and amongst the tribes, there has been an ongoing conversation about where buffalo could or should come from. I suspect that will go on. One of the positive observations I can make is there are now more opportunities for buffalo to come from different tribes, from Yellowstone. Because of the work of the tribes, there are many more buffalo, wild buffalo in this country than there were 20 years ago. And at the end of the day, I don't think there will be a problem with supply. There may again be some pretty significant argument and debate about, well, who should get to or where they should come from, but whether or not we have plenty of buffalo. I would say to the council, there has been some friction with the Intertribal Buffalo Council. Not sure whether maybe wanting a little more control of this process. I know there's been pushback from the other tribes against ITBC on that. Again, that's a debate for after we decide to move forward. On the fencing, that goes right to Len's question about costs. And one of the things the EIS process will do is add a lot of detail to this. You're all familiar with the studies that go into an EIS, and certainly part of that will be fencing and how we're going to contain these buffalo. And that will raise up some other questions. Do we even want to contain them where CMR borders public lands managed by the BLM? Perhaps there isn't a fence there. With some of the private landowners adjacent to CMR, it may be more a question of fencing out buffalo if they don't want them on their private land, as opposed to a boundary fence that keeps buffalo there, and we may just be wanting buffalo to move around some particular piece of ground rather than through it. So all of those are detailed questions. There's, you know, fencing is expensive. It's expensive in that country because it doesn't hold up very well. But one of my first legal issues was fighting cattlemen at CMR who wanted to maintain a lot of cattle numbers out there. And one of the big issues 35 years ago was fencing. And at that point, the Fish and Wildlife Service went and got a line item budget for $1 million to put in boundary fencing at CMR. So where the service wants to do fencing, they have the ability to get that appropriation. I do think we'll see a lot of discussion about just what kind of fencing, we've come a long ways too from a 5-wire barbed wire fence that won't let an antelope crawl under it. Now we'll look at wildlife friendly fencing. And again, that's a detail that will come through the EIS process.
Go ahead, Bing.
Well, that little herd that was on that southeast side, I believe, of the refuge that was there. All it was four wire fence that they had them keep out of, for them to stay out of the CMR.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
so-
the American Prairie group, borders, they have 20,000 acre tract that borders the northeast side of UL Bend. And they have developed their own fencing because their neighbors don't want buffalo, so they put a lot of investment into it. And the boundary fence at CMR between there and American Prairie, and then where American Prairie borders other private land, is all smooth wire, high tension. The technique is there to do wildlife friendly fencing throughout that country. And you know, we have collectively really not done much public relations around this effort. It's always been my view, and Bill Snell at Rocky Mountain Tribal Leaders and others that we've been working with, that at least at this point in the process, a lot of these discussions are better done quietly and in meeting rooms rather than in the press. I do think once this becomes more of a public issue, there will be enormous public support for the concept of a tribal herd on a vast grassland in eastern Montana. And I think American Prairie will be part of building that public support at when that's appropriate or when that time comes.
Is there any additional updates on the BLM parcels or how they're going to be managed? Or is there any more resting of BLM parcels from cattle grazing?
The American Prairie Reserve, as they have bought private lands, have acquired BLM grazing permits. And they began a process now probably a decade ago to convert those cattle permits to buffalo permits. The BLM approved that, and that's now in litigation. Tom, I'm not quite sure where the litigation is. I don't think it's out of the district court yet in the federal courts. I think the BLM and American Prairie have a strong case, but we'll wait and see what the federal courts say. And again, no great revelation to this council. There's plenty of opposition to this plan, which is part of the reason it's moved so slowly. And I think the expectation would be if the service were to announce this next month or in November, that the state of Montana and private landowners would say that's really a bad idea, and it's going to take some political fortitude to move forward. And again, I think once that announcement's made, there will be a lot of support to move it forward within the conservation community and from many different publics that really can imagine what we're talking about here today is a great positive step forward. I'll leave it at that. But the road is long in front of us, but we've come a good ways down the road too. So
persistence will prevail.
Yeah, this council knows that from the National Bison Range. That seemed easy when we started, and 20 years later, it was awfully good to get it done.
Indeed. Thank you, Tom, for the update.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. Thanks so much to everyone.
Thank you, sir. I know we look forward to positive outcomes in the upcoming elections, so.
High hopes. We have high hopes.
James has high hopes, even though he stepped in it this morning. Thanks, Tom. Drive safe. What else you got, John?
We can go right into the legal update. I think we have everybody on here that we need to
Do you
have.
need executive or
We do, please.
executive session? Okay. Close the meeting.
Make sure everybody's on here. Yeah, we've got everybody we need.
I was raised by my grandmother, and one of the phrases that she used with me often when I was growing up is lo que le duela, which means what makes your heart rise up in either anguish or concern. And I have a concern as the county superintendent of schools about our county and what's happening with children that we are losing on our reservation. Before COVID-19, that spring, I had set up some meetings with all the superintendents in the county, and we were talking about the possibility of an alternative high school and what could we do here in our county to provide for our young people that are just falling through the cracks. Our state system is penalizing them if they are 16 years old and feel like the school is not meeting their needs. They really are not given very many options. They can go into homeschool, which is expensive if they want a real curriculum, or they can drop out, or they can pursue their high set. I'm grateful to the tribe in particular because they have had the foresight to back a program that Brian Dumontier has study skills over at SKC, and he has a wonderful program with the high set. But for our 16 and 17-year-olds that go into that program, it's a matter of paperwork that has to go then to the state in order for them to be able to take that high set test. And they are being so punitive, and I have letters going out to our state superintendent, and I have taken this to the county superintendent's conference across the state, because if they don't mark every little box or have a job already lined up, or they don't have a college class that they're already matriculating into or have lined up, then they deny them that right to take that test. And I think that's wrong. And so I feel like we need to find another way to give our kids an opportunity that are in that kind of bottleneck. They're not old enough to really understand, like you and I, how important their future is. They don't really get it. It takes a little bit before they recognize how important every opportunity is and what they need to do to really be an adult. And we need to help them. And so I have a meeting at the end of this week with the superintendents in the county again. We're going to reenact, relive, breathe life into that idea of what could we do to provide an alternative. At the time before COVID hit, the Job Corps Center was sitting empty, and we had talked about coming to talk to you about using one of those buildings, and all of our districts contributing teachers to that. So maybe it would be a half-time English teacher, a full-time math teacher, another science teacher, and so everybody would be doing their part. It would be a high school for all of us. It wouldn't just be Polson's or Ronan's or, St. Ignatius, Arlea, or Charlo. It would be a Lake County alternative high school that would meet the needs of our kids that are not functioning in our regular high schools and that feel like there's no alternative. They get turned down by the high set. Our state superintendent, I don't know if you know this, is putting forth the idea of going back to the GED. We did a huge study on that before we went to the high set. And Denise Juneau led the way, showing us that was not best. And it's not best for all students, but especially our tribal students. You sit for a 3-hour exam. You pass it or you fail it. The high set has 8 different sections. You can pass one section at a time. And then when you've passed them all, you get your high set. That's much more doable for all of our students. And so I would just like to put that before you and ask council to consider, how could we partner together? We need a location and we need a commitment from all of our players so that we can work together and do this for our kids. And that's just an idea right now. Maybe it's a dream, but I think it's doable. Other places have done it. Why can't we? Our kids are more than valuable enough. And that's what's on my heart. I heard at our tribal council meeting recently, our tribal ed meeting, that Michelle Mitchell did for us, by the way, just an amazing, amazing day. I want you to know how proud I was to be there. Councilman Charlo, I know you were there, you represented the council, and it was phenomenal. Miranda was there. I'm not sure who all was there because there were so many faces and people, but thank you for that opportunity for all of us to come together. But there was a phrase that was used in Salish, and I'm sure I can't pronounce it correctly, but I'm going to give it a try because maybe it'll resonate with your heart, with what I shared, my grandmother shared with me. It was Semaspa'us. Is that anywhere close? It means what is on your heart, or what moves your heart? That's what's on my heart, our young people. Dayton's doing fine. I'm proud of them. What can we do for these 16, 17-year-olds that we're losing? That's all I have, council, other than the other thing my grandmother taught me is when you go to visit, you always bring a gift. And so I have a gift for you.
Any additional questions for Carolyn?
I have one question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Len.
Carol,
Yes.
what is the, estimated cost per school year to provide lunch?
Well, we don't really have a standard because we do have free and reduced and we do have full pay, but it's I believe the rate right now is right about $4.10
Okay.
for full pay.
Yeah, I was just thinking in my mind, I mean, what is actually, why we're not funding this? And something we need to probably consider because to have the success in any school, you need to have a lunch. You know, the kids need to eat. That's
Well,
what,
Dayton does not have a dedicated kitchen, and that's one of the reasons why they can't serve. What they have as a kitchen, it worked in the 70s and the 80s, but then we have all kinds of regulation now. And now you have to have a separate facility from your students, and there's access in that room because that room is also used for art and music and study groups, et cetera. So they don't allow us to serve out of that part of Dayton. I have more. Did you get everyone? Well, it won't rot in one night. They're coming back. Yes. I'm taking some up to the
Freezer.
Put them there.
Put it in the freezer, and then if they don't pick it up in 3 days, it's mine.
Yep.
Thank you for the bread. Wow. Did you? Oh, sure. That's one of my favorite things was making bread with my mother, and
Yes.
doughs and, you know, and rolls and cinnamon rolls and
That
the
was
smell
one of my
bread
favorites
cooking.
also. I can see my grandmother's hands watching me how to make the little bolitos, the little small rolls, and how to put them into the pan so that they were nice and toasty on the outside and soft on the inside. She would show me how to do that even from when I was a small girl.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
I would make the motion to accept the 2024 annual report for the Dayton School District.
Thank you, Lynn. Motion by Lynn. Second by Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you again for coming in.
Thank you.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
I probably remember, thank you for the bread, by the way. If I remember right, Dayton has part of the district that has tribal land that they lease from the tribe, is that correct?
That's correct. The school is actually on tribal land.
I know I asked this 15 years ago, but have we figured out how to value that lease so that the school can count that as an in-kind contribution from the tribes? Because I know it's probably leased for like $1 a year
It
or
is.
something like that.
That's correct.
But yet the value of that lease, the school could use to say, look, the tribes are contributing the value of that lease, that land, as an in-kind contribution, you know, when you're applying for grants and such and so forth.
Councilman, that is so smart. I never, ever thought of that. Thank you.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the school is needing, I mean, it
Mhm.
helps, it really does.
It
So-
absolutely does.
So I mean, you know, and I've asked about it 20 years ago, but,
Mhm,
and I remember asking about it for the school as well, that
mhm.
that land be valued and you'd be able to use, the school could use that, so anyway.
We've never looked at it that way. We have a valuation on the property itself, but we never did look at, like an annual contribution. I'll give that some thought and talk to people smarter than I to see what we can
Yeah,
do that way.
Maybe it'll help, I don't know, but it kind of, because sometimes the tribe's constituencies or our foes, so to speak,
Mhm.
often forget that. Oh, well, the tribes just, well, no, we're giving the value of the use of that land for all these years as a
Mhm,
contribution to the community. And
Yeah.
fire halls and schools and airports and so forth and so on.
That's a tremendous idea. I really had never thought of it that way. Yeah, have to. Don't let me forget.
I might forget, but I won't.
All right.
Thank you, James. Thank
Can-
you.
Can I take anything back to the other counties, the other superintendents in the county as far as council's possible interest in helping us with a high school? I'm not asking you to commit money,
What?
just
think- I
heart.
think at this point in time, we can ask our tribal education department to provide some options, for council's consideration.
It's a good idea. Put it on Miranda.
All right. We'll do that. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you, council.
Thank you. All right, next up, Buck Lawrence. Good afternoon, sir. Buck, could you push the button on your speaker there?
Sorry,
There you
about
go.
that.
Thank you, sir.
I'm colorblind today. I asked Amy if she'd pass out the new TBR pins. We just got them in and have got the 2024 date on them.
Thank you for the pins. Those are beautiful.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Council. My name is Lawrence Kenmill. I'm the representative for the Tribal Veterans Representative that was assigned by the council in the late 90s. And I've been involved with the Veterans Affairs Administration for just about 30 years now. Or even before that, because we were also involved in the National Guard from 1983. But I have Buck, Bill, and Amy to do a presentation on the PACT Act, which is going to be done as on a seminar that we're going to be holding on September 17th, 2024 at SKC. McDonald Gym. So, Buck, you want to do a presentation?
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Council. First, what I'd like to do is say thank you and thank Jennifer for getting me on at the last minute. We kind of, last couple of weeks since we were over in Billings, we've been on a fast track trying to keep track of everything. We'll get back Friday night. We've actually got to turn around and come right back to Missoula, and we got to fly to Bangor, Maine. We're going to be doing the 24th annual TBR training in Bangor, Maine, and then we're going to do a PACT Act Claims Clinic the 26th in Bangor. And what we do with the PACT Act Claims Clinics is we reach out to veterans and their family members, and that one thing that we do is the back 2 pages on what Bill passed out to you. It talks about what the PACT Act events are and what we try to do with the PACT Act Claims Clinics. And we did one here last October, and we're going to do it again the 17th of September. And what we do is we try to reach out to the tribal councils and explain what we're going to do at the events. And in fact, I was back here in the back, the individual that we work with, Heather Osborne, she's in Florida right now, and we were talking about this event and getting what's known as the vendors that come in to do the event and bring in the mobile medical units and what we do to bring those events in and what we ask of the tribal council and the community to be able to bring the mobile medical units and the services. And the mobile medical units each have their own medical team that come in to support the veterans and the veterans' families to be able to put on the event. So we started using these back 2 pages to go along with the flyer so that the veterans in the community will understand what we ask them to actually bring in. So when we do these PACT Act claims clinics, we are capable, if we can get all the records of the veterans and the family members, of actually doing a claim on the spot that day. We did one in Browning last year after we left here, 2 days after the event here. We had a veteran drove down from Edmonton, and he was actually the first claim that was on the books that day. We actually time how long it takes for the first claim to go in from the time they get their claim filed to get out into the medical unit, and then how long it takes to go through for the claim. That first claim that day was actually rated at 100% before the day was over with that day. So in today's dollars, when a veteran is rated at 100%, you're looking at right at $3,500 per month per veteran. And then other money is added on based on a spouse and independent children. So it's basically $3,500 a month and higher based on what the veterans get. So these events do have a lot of money that's involved with it when we get them. And that's not including healthcare that the veterans, and then 100% veterans, their spouses and their children also get healthcare through what's called CHAMP VA, that they get through the VA through insurance that the dependents get from the veteran. So that's why we try to get the PACT Act claims clinics into all the different communities. Amy and I are working on, I think we have 10 of them over the year. By time after we had the meeting there in Billings, we also set up another one that day for Fort Hall, Idaho. That'll be our last one this year, which is going to be the 6th of November. That'll be our last one this year. So we've got them anywhere from Maine to here to Fort Hall, Idaho, and a lot of different places in between. In fact, today's Tuesday. We got one going on today in Roland, Oklahoma, with the Cherokee Nation today. So we think that these events can help not only the veteran, but the veterans' family members, and they can help the community in the long run, because we did an event in Barrow, Alaska a few years ago, and it dawned on me then, you take a native community and you bring that amount of money into a community, how many times does that $3,500 actually get spent in a native community before it leaves that community? And Barrow is when it really dawned on me with Barrow, because when I was in Barrow, RS hot dogs at the time in the lower 48 were 99 cents a pack. In Barrow, Alaska, they were $9.95 a pack. So that money could get spent over and over before it actually leaves the community. So that's why we try to get these so much and get them scheduled ahead of time, so that we can get them for the community, for the veterans, and for the veterans' families. So does anybody have any questions about why we try to set these up so far in advance?
No questions? No.
The other thing that we've talked about a lot in the past, we were here a couple months ago, I think, Lawrence, that we're trying to get done, and we've had some issues, is kind of related to the PACT Act claims clinics and the work that's been done at the Veterans Resource Center, is trying to get the announcement put back into the Charcusta. Lloyd Jackson, Lloyd passed away the 5th of April. And in fact, I went over this morning with Amy and Bill, and we did the last of the paperwork for Sally this morning, and I'm going to carry it back and we'll get it put in either this evening or in the morning. And Lloyd did so much for this community and for the veterans, not only of this community, but anywhere around that came to Lloyd to get the benefits that Lloyd had. We did a study, and I sent a study that we did, and we actually had the study published. At one time, between Lloyd, Bill, and Bill's former or past wife, there was $1 million a month coming into this community from either claims, medical care, and other claims that were filed out of this office right here in this building that were being done because of the TBR program and Lawrence helping with the program. That this office is an integral part of the benefits for this community. We really need to see if we can get this office open back up every Wednesday. I've got a copy, Bill, can you pass it back out, please? This is an older, I just glanced at my email real fast this morning and popped up a announcement that was, Lloyd had typed up, we can do another announcement to, create a current announcement to try to get the announcement back into the Charcusta. We met with the Charcusta and they were told that they had to take the announcement out of the paper, that Lawrence and Bill, and at the time Lloyd, were not allowed to have that office there and they were not allowed to work with veterans. We had Lloyd and Bill and Lawrence in here and they were recognized for the 21 years that they had worked with veterans, and they are authorized to work with veterans. We gave them certificates and plaques that of the work they had done. We'd like to see what we can do to help get that announcement put back into Charcusta, to get that office opened back up, or announcement that that office is open to help with veterans. And if, you know, what we can do to help, I'll do whatever I need to do to get that announcement typed back up, working with Lawrence to get that a weekly notice put out, because Bill's been sitting in there every Wednesday with no veterans showing up because there's no announcement. So all the files are in there. And Lloyd started that. He was one of the original 9 TBRs. Starting, if you notice on the pin that Amy just gave you, it says 2001 through 2024. Lloyd was one of the original 9. There's only one left out of those original 9. There was, I know a lot of you may know James Floyd. James Floyd, and myself and one other TBR were the only 3 left out of the original 12 that started out with that program. So we're really trying to make sure that Amy, she keeps looking at me like I'm crazy, but I said, getting to be your program. I'm going to go fishing one of these days. So we really want to make sure that the individuals have the recipe, if that's the word I want to use, to keep this program coming. Because this was one of the top 2 TBR programs in the country, was right here. And we want to make sure that this program keeps going. And I think that's one of the things that I want to ask, is that the support of the council to keep the program going here.
Yeah, go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I guess for starters is, I don't think this council was aware that the program was going to be no longer here at this facility. It was my understanding that this was facilitated by Tribal Health. Tribal Health was, and I believe Kevin Howlett at the time was working with the program on making sure that they had office space, et cetera, et cetera. But I just don't remember this council ever taking an action saying we will no longer have this service here at Pablo here.
One of the things.
Lawrence, could you push the button, please? Thank you.
The tribal council established the office down the hall for the benefit of the TVR. And then later on, Kevin Howlett received monies through Tribal Health for veterans advocacy. And then he picked up the cost of that facility and continued it on. And now we still get the office, but we don't have to pay that rent that was originally there. And so it was always a good working relationship between Tribal Health and the TVRs. Even though the TVRs were established under the Tribal Council, Tribal Health still has a tribal veterans advocate, not a tribal veterans representative, but an advocate. And we've always worked together with John Wheeler when he was the advocate, and there was a working relationship that kind of separated, and we would like to get that back together, but both respecting each other's responsibilities. And so that's what we're looking at now is that, you know, keep the TVRs, keep the space available to them. And, so that we can continue working with the veterans that are not only tribal members, but tribal veterans, our veterans that are within the reservation. So that, because once a vet, always a vet, and no matter who you are always gonna be a vet. And we took the responsibility of representing those veterans, whether they're Indian or non-Indian. And so that's what we're looking at is that, you know, we provide services not only to tribal members, but to all veterans. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, tribal health is responsible, since they're funded through tribe and a federal responsibility for Native Americans. They can't go outside that realm. I don't know if they can or not, but that's basically how it always works, is that they receive funds for Native Americans only, so they stick to doing that. But then they also have descendants.
No, there's flexibility there, Lawrence. They can go outside if they want to. Even pharmacies are opened up to the general public, and you can open up services.
Yeah. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that when we're bringing in non-natives into this building, they know we're here, that we're here. It's a win-win situation when we serve both the Indian and non-Indian.
So right now, Bill, you're here on Wednesdays, but no one's showing up because nobody knows you're here.
That's correct.
So we need to get the Charcusta to put in an ad, weekly ad or something periodically. Jen, go ahead.
We could also put it in every one email or.
Yeah, which is like free. Yeah, it could be an email announcement. We'll see what we can do to make sure that happens. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Yeah, and it was a situation that they just pulled everything that the TVR was doing without really talking to the TVR and the responsibility that he has. And we have some files in our office that are really needs to be protected, and Bill is the only one with the key. And we had to have those locks changed on there because they changed the locks.
I remember that debate.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we'll see what we can do to redo it. Council consensus to definitely, I don't see why we wouldn't continue to announce the services that's being provided by the travel representative. Yeah. And Tracy can still do her thing.
You know, one thing that my boss, she's the network director for an 11-state region, and there's several committees that I'm on out of Washington, D.C., and I know they're going to recognize Lloyd. They've asked for, in fact, I can send, I don't know if the council has seen the article that was an interview done with Lloyd back in 2000 and I want to say 6. I can send you that article. It's a pretty good article. I hadn't read it in years, and I can send that article to you that was done, and it's a published journal that was actually done with Lloyd and with Lyle Wada. He's on it's really interesting because the top 2 TBR programs in the country, they both ended up on the Governor's Veterans Affairs Commissions for Wyoming and for Montana both. And they both led the TBR programs across the country. They had the top 2 TBR programs. So they ended up doing a journal study, and it took us a while to get everything pulled together, but we did do a printed journal that came out. So Lloyd and Lyle Water are both in that journal. So I can get the interview that was done with Lloyd and send it to you if you guys are interested, or excuse me, council members are interested in reading that. I'll send it to you. We can read it. It's pretty interested in reading it. So, but one thing, the network director, Sunena Kumar, I know they're going to recognize Lloyd for what he did for the VA and for the Tribal Veterans Representative Program, because Sally and, the boys have asked me to speak at his memorial, which is gonna be at, 10:30 on May the 4th at Ronan Community Center. So I get back in from, someplace on the 2nd, and then we've got to do an all-employee sweat on the 3rd at Fort Harrison until that is over that night. Then I'm gonna turn around and drive over here real quick on the 4th for that. So I'll be here on the 4th for that. But, one thing, you know, I may be, hopefully not out of line, but it's just a thought I had last night. And then again this morning, it would be nice if the Veterans Resource Center could be named the Lloyd Jackson Veterans Resource Center. He gave 21 years of his life to the veterans of this community. And I was asking Lawrence about that because he did give so many years and so many hours to that. He traveled all over the country with us, and he's gone to South Dakota, Utah, Wyoming, Texas, and a bunch of different places with us for the veterans of this nation. So,
Well, thank you for that, Buck. We'll certainly take that under consideration. Definitely. Lloyd was a one of a kind individual. I worked with him for many, many years and always appreciated everything that he did. Yeah.
the last thing that Sally told me the other day, I was filling out some paperwork with her, and she said that when they were in American Samoa, he met the Queen of England and the King of Tonga. And he said the king was so big they had to bring a forklift up there to the plane with a platform for the king to get on. And Lloyd, he ran upstairs, walked in there and said, "Hey, King, how are you today?" And she said the whole security staff just fell off on the ground laughing. Lloyd looked around and said, "What?" But I just said, yeah. You know, his nickname was Bubbles or Nuke Jackson, you know, and he's got lots of stories of that guy. He had us laughing everywhere we went, so.
Yeah, I called him Action Jackson.
Yeah, Action Jackson.
I got stories for traveling with Lloyd.
I can tell you how he got the name Bubbles Jackson. We were down in, Boise on maneuvers the whole week, and he was up, driving for the CO. And he only gets maybe 1 hour or 2 hours sleep a night, and you're going for a whole week. And that last night, the CO told him that he could take a nap, so he laid down, but he just happened to open his eyes and he saw the water buffalo, and there was a jug on top, and he could swear to God that was ice water. And he goes over there and he starts guzzling it. And by the time he realizes it, it's soap. And so he starts getting vomiting, and all that's coming out is bubbles. And the medic is sitting there like that, trying to calm him down, and then turning his head and laughing, and then coming down. So that's how he got his name, Bubble Jackson.
Well, he had a clean mouth after that.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for your time. If no one else had any more questions for me, we appreciate you getting us on the agenda, and we'll head back and get going then.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Len, and then Lawrence.
I think that's a great idea to rename the program after Lloyd. And so what do we need to do to make that happen? I mean, is that something that the council needs to acknowledge? I mean, and you're referring to the program here, right?
Yes, it's a sovereign nation. It's like one thing that we do with the traditional healing cultural diversity training is we always have a hard time getting VA employees to understand we're on a sovereign nation. We're visitors, and we do what the sovereign nation tells us, and it's your program. And if you tell us that it's now going to be known as the Lloyd Jackson Veterans Resource Center, then that's what we'll refer to it as from the day you tell us that that's what it's going to be called. And I'll send a note or an email or memo to Sunena Kumar that it's now known as the Lloyd Jackson Veterans Resource Center and TBR program.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would like the council to take action today, and let's move forward with that concept and get that done.
Yeah, I just got texted something. So, Lawrence, you've been doing this for a long time. Same time as Lloyd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was his assistant from 2001. He was the TVR and I was the assistant TVR.
Could we add your name to it?
No.
Okay, want to ask. Your level of
Lloyd.
dedication is good.
Lloyd is the most deserving of that, because he's really been dedicated to the Veterans Administration. I had multiple areas of work where his main focus on most of the time was the tribal veterans. Even though he worked for Shoreline, he still made the commitment to the Veterans Administration and to the tribal veterans.
Lawrence, you're a
here on
humble
this
man.
organization.
You're a humble man, and I expect that you would say that. That you would. But your dedication is fantastic also, Lawrence.
You know, I tried to tell Bill that we were gonna bring Bill on and Mary Rogers on. They both told me I'd fire him within a month. They stayed on for years. So Lloyd, Lawrence, Bill Rogers, and Mary Rogers. They're what made this program what it is. And it's like I tell people all the time, there's no I in team. You had the best team in the state of Montana, period. No other nation in this state could touch the team that was here at this complex. None. I don't care where you look. It's the best team in the state of Montana. But the reason when I asked Lawrence about naming it the Lloyd Jackson Veterans Resource Center is because of everywhere that we went, the things that we've done, the stories, just everything over, ever since 2001. I mean, we could tell you so many stories between him hanging out of car windows, calling turkeys, the whole bit. It's just, there was always, veterans were at the front. It doesn't matter how many hours a day we worked, we always took care of veterans before we goofed off. And it was always veterans who were there. And that's what Sally told me this morning. She said, from the bottom of my heart, I'll never be able to thank you. And I said, Sally, you don't have to thank me. I said, this is for Lloyd. This is like a tattoo I got that runs across my arm right here. It's veterans first, or excuse me, family first.
Oh, I thought you said Lloyd Jackson.
Yeah, I said Lloyd Jackson. But, it's just like we're going to Maine, and I always tell her when she gets in trouble, Amy Marie, you're not listening. I told her, I said, it's family first. So I'm making her leave me behind in Maine so she can go to Salt Lake City to be there for her daughter's first horse show. So she's leaving me behind. So I told her, I said, it's always family first. So that's the way Lloyd was when it comes to veterans. It's always take care of those veterans. And then we've always done that. So it's just, he was just part of that original 9. And there's only one left out of those 9. And the hard part for me is having to tell all these guys goodbye. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And it's been hard. I've got one more I got to tell goodbye to. And then it's going to be time for me to go fishing. So.
Well, thank you, Buck. Really appreciate your work. And yeah, it is a team. And yeah, Lawrence and Bill and Mary are part of that team. I just wanted to make sure that we want to recognize everybody's dedication. So, so with that, you're making a motion, Len? I don't know. Yeah, let's do a motion. Go ahead and do a motion.
I would make the motion to rename the TVR program to the Lloyd Jackson Memorial TVR program.
That's the way you want to word it, Buck? Or
Project.
center? Or
Center.
Lloyd Jackson Memorial TVR Veterans Resource.
push the button and say that again so Abby gets it right.
Yep. And Buck's not colorblind anymore. The Lloyd Jackson Memorial TVR and Veterans Resource Center of the Flathead Nation.
Okay. Second by Martin? Or Bing? Second by Bing? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor? Unanimous? Thank you again. Thank you for your service, every one of you.
I got one more
Yep,
thing,
go ahead, Lawrence.
Mr. Chairman, and that's the I just had a meeting with, at the Spokane Veterans, Center, on the, Memorial date, and the October 17th will be the date, scheduled for the, Native American Memorial, ceremony. At 10 o'clock, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. Shohei? On council Thursday. Okay. Nope. Got a little break. Motion to adjourn? All right, we are adjourned.